Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Q&A 26. I just ripped off Q&A 25. It was kind of a disaster for whatever reason, but the questions were valid. And now I'm still in the van. I'm still in Maine, and I've changed clothes so that I can help myself editing and figure out where one film stopped and the other started. And I've also got a bevy of my mutant laptop questions ready to go. I'm one person with one opinion. Do not let that stagger you. Don't let that offend you. I'm just one person. If you don't agree with me, totally fine. I've got weird opinions on this little photo world that we're in, and maybe some of you will find them helpful. Question number 1. I'm going to pin a question here and sabotage your gear clickbait. Thank you. Apologies. You've mentioned how mixing formats and media can negatively impact the sense of consistency in a story, what a story might have had. It's true. I took your word for it and now shoot 35 and 50 lens almost exclusively, and my pictures have definitely become less awful and more harmonious. Good, 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 good. I do wonder, however, say get into shooting portraits. Have you ever successfully mixed your Hasselblad portraits with your 35 reportage? I feel like portraits are a different bird altogether, and if done tactfully, a larger format portrait could fit somewhere amidst the grainy dock work. Let us know if you have any feeling about this. The short answer is yes, and you hit the nail on the head. When it comes to mixing formats, I think it's best to mix themed formats. So for me, that meant shooting portraits with the Hasselblad and details with the Hasselblad, and then keeping the reportage with the 35. That way, when it came to consistency, when a viewer would see an image made with 6x6, they understood what they were going to be seeing. That's called visual hierarchy. The same thing applies with text in the design of your book. It's called type hierarchy. That means if you're going to open a spread of a magazine and you see a caption, and the title of the image is in bold in one typeface, and then the title is in one bold typeface, and then the caption is in another typeface that's in, let's say, italic, the human brain says, oh, okay, when I turn the next page and I see that type hierarchy, I understand what it means. The italic is going to be the caption, the bold is going to be the title. The same applies to your photography in a book. If you're shooting and crossing over 35 and 6.6, all the same, it just looks muddled. And I have photographers, I know photographers who I really like, who have tried that and the work just didn't work. There were some individual standalone wonderful pictures, but as a cohesive body of work, it did not work. So I would err on that safe side, and I would think about themes when it comes to the images. But it's a good question, and one that's a lot of fun to play around with. Okay, question number 2. Would you recommend working on more than one project at a time? If so, what are the things to look out for in order to get the most out of the time and effort while focusing on multiple projects? That's a great question, actually. The question, I guess the answer is, depends on who you are and what your schedule is. If you have the ability to, one, juggle multiple thought processes at the same time, and when I'm talking about projects, I'm assuming that you mean attached projects. And here's the thing, sometimes attached projects are distant. You have to travel. You only get to work on them a couple of times a year. My Death Valley project would be a perfect example. If I get there between now and the end of the year, I'll be lucky. I'm tentatively planning that, but I could get 2, 3, 4 days there total. Then I probably won't go back until maybe the spring, and then summer it's too hot. I don't go all the way. I have to wait until the next winter. So I can have that project going and then have something close to home that I can work on all the time. So the answer is yes, but it's tricky and it's difficult. And at some point, you're probably going to have to choose a side. And you're going to say, this is a project that deserves 100% of my attention, and I need to finish it, and then move on, and I can eventually go back to the second project, and maybe that second project elevates up to your pole position, and you focus and finish that. So photographers often have multiple projects going, and sometimes it works well, and other times it can sort of unravel, or you just look at the work and say, this isn't good enough, and I need to spend more time on this. Okay, question number 3. When coming up with a project idea or topic, how broad or narrow should the idea be? With experience writing history, sometimes starting with a broad topic can be too much to handle once you really get your hands on it. Sincerely, Stephen. Specific. I think the more specific you are, the better, because we live in a world that attention, to quote Doug Rushkoff, attention is the currency being traded. And so let's say, for example, when I was in college, there was a photographer, prior to me coming even into photo school in college, there was a photographer named Jim Hubbard. And Jim Hubbard was, I think, a newspaper photographer somewhere like in Milwaukee or somewhere like that. And Jim did a project called Shooting Back, where he went into the poor communities, and he gave kids cameras, and the kids photographed their own community. Jim was the first person I saw doing that. And that shooting back became legendary. Jim now is a California-based guy, still around, still doing work. And when I was in college, the homeless story was what every college photographer seemed to want to do. And I remember a journalism instructor saying to me, I was like, I'm going to do a project on, damn it, I'm going to solve this homeless thing once and for all by myself. I'm going to go do the definitive project on homelessness in America. I'm going to travel. I have no money, no skill, no training, but I'm going to do this. And my journalism instructor was like, no, you're not. And, oh, by the way, why don't you just go down the street to Billy over there, who's homeless? And Billy probably represents a significant portion of people in the country who are homeless. And that way you don't have to travel. All you have to do is get to know Billy and spend every waking moment with Billy, day and night, covering his story, talking to him, interviewing him, photographing him, and Billy will represent homelessness in America. And that always stuck with me. So it's like saying, I'm going to do a project on the American border, US-Mexico border. Great, it's been done, but why not find some little microcosm of that story that's representative of the bigger story and just drill down on it as hard and deep as you possibly can. That's good photography. Whew. Breaking a sweat in here, people. It's dry outside and the humidity in this van is running at 100%. Okay, hello from Greece. This is question 4, I think. Congrats on your projects. My question, could you share with us your experience on learning Spanish? It's not your mother tongue. How did you know it wasn't my mother tongue? Soy amable. Anyway, I learned Spanish because I grew up, when we moved to Texas, San Antonio was 3/4 Latino population. San Antonio in South Texas is a Latino-speaking population. I live in New Mexico now, Latino-speaking population. I lived in Southern California, Latino-speaking population. So in middle school, I was forced to take a language, and it was either German, I didn't know any Germans, French, didn't know many French people, or Spanish, because then I could talk to everyone around me. There were kids that I went to school with in middle school and high school that didn't speak any English, and they were in public high school. I don't know how they did it, and they passed. They probably did better than I did. So Spanish was forced on me. Then in high school, I started to realize the importance of Spanish. And I was like, hey, this is fun. And a language is a passport. If you can speak fluently a second language and a third language, and I would go English, Spanish, French just off the top of my head. Chinese would be another great one to know. But if you can speak those languages, they are a passport into another life. You can have a second life in another country or even here in the States because you're fluent in these languages. The Spanish thing comes in handy all the time. I used it yesterday on the beach in Maine, speaking to a Latino family. And they were playing with their kids, and I said something in Spanish, and they were like, no way. And basically, you know in their head, they were like, holy cow, the gringos speak Spanish. And I don't speak fluent Spanish. I'm not even remotely close. Those of you who know me know that's a fact. So, and then in college, I took it again. And then in 1995, I went to Guatemala to a language school for about a month. And by the end of that month in Guatemala, I was pretty good. I was pretty good, actually. And since then, I have been in slow decline. I mean, it's agonizing. I'm on oxygen and I'm just got the oxygen dial cranked up and my Spanish is barely alive. So it's not pretty, but that's how I came to speak the Spanish that I do. Question number 5. Hey, Dan, would love to hear your thoughts on the visual language for documentary work. Can you have a different one per project, and is it best to maintain a style and language throughout your career? I'm torn between monochrome and color. Some projects seem great in one or the other, but I'm wondering if I should just stick fast to one. That's a really good question. So I know photographers who have a career based on one singular style of work. And that's what they're known for, and they've done it the same way for decades. And a lot of these are celebrity portrait people, portrait photographers. Sebastião Salgado was a 35mm documentary guy for most of his career. He did go to, I think, a Pentax camera, a 645 camera for a while. Now he's digital, I don't know, but it looks like 35 black and white. That way, at the mid-career point, or the end of your career, you've got this unbelievable, cohesive, consistent, massive archive of work. That's one school, and I completely admire that because that just lets you focus on the work, the content, and you don't have to ever think about your gear because you're doing the same thing over and over again. But I'm going to throw a wrinkle in here. I'm going to throw you Frank Ockenfels. Holy cow. Don't ask me to spell that last name. It's Ockenfels, the third. Frank Ockenfels III. And there are other Franks out there, but Frank's a unique dude. You go to Frank's studio, and above his desk, there's it's a room, square, like most rooms. And there are magazine covers circling the room, magazine covers that he has shot. And it looks like 50 different photographers. The guy can do anything. He uses a range of camera that is truly staggering, analog and digital, every single kind. He creates something every day. He can draw, he can illustrate, he can write, he can photograph. He is a man of many talents. And so Frank is a chameleon. You see work, and sometimes I can look at it and say, that's an Ockenfels. And then other times I look at it and I go, wow, who did that? And you go, oh my God, it's Ockenfels again. He strikes again. He's like the Empire, not Emperor. Empire Strikes Back. Sorry, I'm a Star Wars fan, but I'm not like an uber fan. I know the second one is supposed to be the uber fans' favorite. What is it? It's not the one with the Ewoks. That they lost me with the Ewok thing. It's the Star Wars and then Empire Strikes Back. That one. That's him. He strikes back. Play along, people. Okay. So, did I even answer that? It depends on who you are, what you want to do. At this point in my career, I'm experimenting. Early in my career, it was 2 Leicas, 2 lenses, a bag of TMZ or a bag of Tri-X, and leave me alone and let me stay in the field. If I would have done that intelligently and done that forever, then I would have this big, massive body of work and archive. I don't have it. Now I have like a smattering. I have a yard sale. If you've ever been to a big yard sale with a family that hoards useless stuff, that's my archive. You're like, who would want this stuff? No wonder it's free. Okay, question 5. I'm not even counting anymore. This is starting to come unglued in here. Q&A, can you talk a bit about journaling? Do you write off prompts, stream of consciousness, a bit of both? Thanks. Oh, great question. Haven't had a journal question in a while. The journal has been a huge part of the road trip. As you can tell, all the narratives and voiceovers I'm doing, that comes from my journal. The one switch I have made on this trip for whatever reason, and it's not a permanent switch, is I'm often writing in the morning on my iPad instead of writing with a pen in my journal. I'm on the go much of the day. The journal I'm carrying right now is one of the blurb ones that has like 400 pages, and I love it, but it's heavy and bulky. So I've been sort of leaving it in the van more. And all I'm doing in the field is I am making mental notes and connotations in the field. I'm looking for small observations, a dialect, a word, an expression. I heard a guy the other day, a new friend that I met in New Hampshire, who said to me, he's an ex-police officer, spent 30 years as a cop, and the last 9 as a canine unit. He's like, look, he said, I'm trying to do his accent, armed robber in the woods with a dog and a gun, no problem. Do that all the time. But I see a garter snake, I run like a 12-year-old, screaming. That's cool to me. That's great. That's funny. I can use that. Boom, locks in. Then in the morning I get up, and I typically, each one of these small vignettes will lead to a piece of copy written. The next 2 films, which I haven't released, I'm going to release one today. One was in front of the hotel that I'm sitting in front of right now. I met a Vietnam vet, and we had a very interesting conversation. That is a whole piece. That's the basis of the road trip film that I'm releasing today. Then I did a piece on how neurotic I am as a photographer, just doing basic things during the day because I feel this incessant need to catalog. So I did a film about that. And that came from me making small observations on a boat trip last week, where I was out on a boat for an hour and I was just like obsessing over how I was going to cover this. Then I sit and write, and then it becomes stream of consciousness. And when I say to you people that I consider writing to be the high art, I mean that. Writing to me is above photography. It is the high art. And the reason I say that is that most of us have access to roughly the same vocabulary, roughly. But yet I can put words in an order that make you feel something, and you can do the same. And that order is entirely unique. Your writing style, like your photo style, is unique. My writing style, like my photo style, is unique. And I love making people feel with the underlying narrative of copy first, and then the photos on top of it, not the other way around. I started my career in journalism as a writer, not a photographer. And I remember what my instructor said to me. This was a great quote, and it's absolutely right on the money. And by the way, in journalism school, when you're a writer, you had to buy something called the AP style book, the Associated Press style book. If you were turning in a written piece, whether it was a caption or a news story or a feature story, and you made a grammar, spelling, and punctuation mistake that was in the AP style book, it was an automatic F. You got an F within seconds. They would sit and look at your stuff, and if they found a mistake that was an AP style, they got an F. They didn't even finish reading your stuff. So news writing was like a tightrope. It was terrifying. I also felt it was limiting. So my instructor said to me, look, your grammar, spelling, and punctuation, quote, is a train wreck, but your narrative and your style is fantastic. So I had written a piece about a homeless shelter that was serving food to other homeless folks. And I wrote this news piece that would never been run in a newspaper because it wasn't newsy enough. And he read it and said, man, this story is fantastic, but your grammar, spelling, and punctuation you're a train wreck. It's horrible. But he said, that's why we have full-time editors. You go do your thing. The editor takes your vision with words and turns it into a news piece without losing track of who you are as a writer. That's why editors are so important, and man, do I still need one. There's a couple folks at Blurb, and thank you to those folks who are out there. Whenever I send in my blog posts, I know they're shaking their heads like, oh God, I'm glad he did this because now I don't have to do it, but now I've got to edit this because I'm still a train wreck. Okay, where are we at here? Journaling, that's how I work. Okay, next question, 6, 7, something, I don't know. A new Q&A for the future Q&A. We'll try to be brief, but struggle with how best to frame the question. Feel free to edit for brevity to cut the chase if you decide to use it. While there seems to be some general agreement to some very broad questions in photography, like correct exposure, what makes a great photograph? Seems most subjective to me, and it is. I was just wondering whether the answer to that question had you personally has evolved over time, or has it been the same throughout your life? Whole career, some exposure rules still apply. Sorry again for taking the question. For me, it's the same. I'm about to tell this story in a film that you're going to see either today or tomorrow, where I saw photos from Larry Burroughs, the English photographer, who did a story called Yankee Papa 13 in Life. I think it was in Life magazine. And I saw this when I was in middle school, an old copy of Life laying around. And I saw that. And then I saw another photo in Larry Burroughs, a hilltop landing zone, African-American Marine, Caucasian Marine, about to embrace one another after a firefight where one of them was injured. And I, being this sheltered little kid from the burbs, had never seen anything like that. I didn't know anything about Vietnam. I didn't know anything about what door gunners were doing. I didn't know that all that stuff was going down. In my little world, I didn't see a lot of African-American people hugging white people. I didn't see that. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at it. And it's printed. And it's in a magazine. It's in the magazine. And it stopped me. I started feeling something that I had never felt before. I didn't know what it was. I should have gone straight to therapy because I was like, in my family, emotion was something you pressed down. You didn't talk about. You didn't share. You sucked it up, right? Like from that family. Not so touchy-feely. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at this door gunner breaking down after coming back from a mission. And I was like, whoa, what do I do with that? And then I see these two Marines about to embrace on a hilltop. And I'm like, oh, what do I do with that? And I said to myself at that time, I want to make other people feel that way. I want to make other people feel how I'm feeling now. And that's why I became a photographer. And I think maybe I succeeded like twice in the last 30 years. Let's see, one day ago. Okay, I think we're going to wrap this up soon. What are we at, 20 minutes? Okay. Oh, this is a really good one to end on because I have no idea how to answer you. For the next Q&A, help me, Dan. My DAM, Digital Asset Management, for you Luddites out there, is a damn mess. I've got photos going back 20 years spread across computer hard drives, external hard drives, current phone, old phone, iPad, Google Photos, cloud. I'm setting up to make several photo books and I'm struggling to remember where certain photos ended up. I wished I'd heard your advice about maintaining an archive many years ago. I need to centralize them, organize. Any advice? Are you aware of any software that might help? Any books on DAM I should read? Oh, funny you should mention it. I've just got a book. Hit that subscribe button down below. Wait, no, that's not me. Peter Crow, K-R-O-G-H, K-R-O-U-G-H. One of those two, pretty sure. Peter's awesome. Peter's very smart. He's intelligent. He knows way more about this than I ever will. He wrote something called the Digital Asset Management Book, also known as the DAM book. To me, it's the Bible of digital asset management. I'm not saying you're going to buy it and adhere to every single thing that Peter does, but he's probably going to blow your mind in terms of how he's organizing his material. This is the funny thing. This is the white elephant in the room of photography, archiving. No one wants to talk about it. Go to a photo trade show and start talk about archiving, and you are going to get a cold shoulder like you cannot believe. How do I know that? Because I've been doing it for years, and I do it for sport because I love it. Hey, nice 60 megapixel camera. What's your archiving system? Get out of the booth. That's what you're going to get. I've been doing this for over a decade, and I absolutely love it. Most photographers I know, I would classify their digital asset management as impending doom, because they are not prepared. They will not admit this. They will tell you the exact opposite. I've got no problem, it's easy. Any photographer who tells you that archiving digital files over time, and I mean decades, tells you it's easy, is delusional, lying, or not doing that, because it's not. Because when you talk to archiving professionals, people who do nothing but archive, you understand from them how difficult it is. My advice to you, number one, buy the digital asset management book. Number two is to determine your system as soon as humanly possible and realize that there probably is no perfect system. But determine it and start. And every single day, focus and stay on the same system. Do not deviate. Don't get lazy. Don't say, I'll do it next week. Oh, I'm not going to import these images. I'll do it next time. Do it every single day. It starts with discipline. That's the only hope you have. I do know someone else that runs a metadata boot camp, and he's amazing. He doesn't use hard drives at all anymore. He basically is using PhotoShelter Pro for his immediate image storage and needs. It's unlimited storage. It has access to it. He can deliver images to clients that way. He uses Backblaze B2, which is based out of Oregon, I believe. And so their servers are there. He's got every single thing backed up at Backblaze B2. But then he also uses Amazon Glacier for his dark cold storage, which is end of days, emergency. You have to pay to access this work, but it's dirt cheap to put it online. Then on Amazon Glacier cold storage, you can choose the server locations around the world where you want your work backed up. So you could say you could choose India, you could choose Ireland, you could choose Washington, D.C., and that way you've got multiple redundancies throughout this system. And that's what you want, is redundancies. Something goes wrong with Backblaze, something goes wrong with PhotoShelter Pro, which is very, very unlikely, and all of a sudden you've got this Amazon offshore, Glacier, secured, cold storage. Now, you are going to pay for these services. This is not cheap, and it's not going to be cheap. And everybody that says, oh, it's just, you put it in the cloud. Just damn it, just put it in the cloud. Well, I got 50 terabytes. Really? Put it in the cloud? Where? How am I going to get it uploaded? How much is that going to cost? And then those same people will say to me, you don't have 50 terabytes, that's impossible. You're right, I don't. I actually have more. And I am not a heavy shooter, but I had a career in photography. I've got 30 years of film scans, and I've got 20 years of high-res digital raw files from a variety of different systems. And I got motion. If you think 50 terabytes is a lot, you just don't know about what pro photographers are accumulating. There's a lot more people out there that have a lot more than that, and they're struggling with where to put it. That's why so many people throw things away. Doc photographers that'll save 2 images from a take. I'll give you an example. I have a friend who's a professional wire service photographer. He's now an editor for wires, and he's lived all over the world. He's an unbelievable war photographer and photojournalist. When digital came along, for whatever reason, his wire service skimped on storage cards. They just wouldn't give him enough. So he would go to these incredible global news assignments, and every day he would save like 1 or 2 files that he transmitted and throw the rest away. And he basically threw away his archive. And now he's out of photography, and he has no revenue coming in from the archive that he had because he just tossed it all away. Don't do that. Storage is cheap now compared to what it was. So save every file, raw files, and keep them, because when you come to make books and you come to reassess your career and you come to look at midlife careers, mid-career projects or post-career projects, you want as much data as possible. So don't throw it away. Keep it. That's the smart thing to do. Read the damn book. Develop a system. Commit to it. Am I covering all your questions? That's it. That's what I would do. I'm actually looking at changing my system. But the truth is I won't, because the photography that I'm doing now for the most part is just work-related stuff. I'm not keeping it. I'm not doing projects because I don't really have time to do projects. I spent 6 hours in the library yesterday, cutting 2 films. I'll go back today, spend 6 hours in the library. If those librarians are like, that riffraff is back in that crusty van in the parking lot. I was sitting in the driver's seat, and someone came up and put something under my windshield wiper. And I knew, my wife was in the back. I go, they're going to try to evict us. I guarantee it. It's just because it's a van and it has out-of-state plates. And it was an older woman, and she came over and didn't see me. I'm 3 feet away from her. She puts it under my thing. Sure enough, I go outside, and it says, you can no longer park here. You're going to get towed. You're abusing the library. And I just talked to the librarian. And I went inside and showed her the sheet, and she was like, don't worry about it. They don't know. Now, the 2 cars on either side of me, those people parked illegally and then walked downtown so they wouldn't have to pay for parking. Nope, they got off scot-free. But the New Mexico plates, yeah, you know why? Because we're outlaws. Everybody's afraid of us. They don't want this riffraff coming through their town. Well, guess what, people? I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. I'll be back.